What's up guys? John Ross for Ross Racing back here again with another video. In the last video I gave you kind of the broad strokes look at how our 2023 racing season went, as well as a breakdown on kind of how to analyze those statistics and what the landscape kind of looks like for the USRA point system and all that good stuff. Well, now we're going to do a little bit more in-depth breakdown on how the season went, look at some statistics, look at what kind of tracks we did good at, where we didn't do so good. And also I'm going to show you some things on the car that we're going to be working on improving for the 2024 season. So first things first, let's run inside. I'll fire up the computer again, and we're going to run through the results from the season and kind of what the highlights were. So let's take a quick run through of how my season went. I'm not going to stop and talk about all the races, but just the highlights. As we mentioned in the last video, my final stats on the year were 1 win, 5 top 5s, and 19 top 10 finishes out of 34 nights of racing, and those 30 total feature appearances. So we opened up the year with a 5th place finish at Fairmont, and if you'll remember, we did a video on that one. Followed that up with 6th place finishes back-to-back at I-35 and Fairmont. We had a 15th place run at Deer Creek, although we had a pretty good car that night. We just kind of got a little bit unlucky with some restarts. Then that was followed up with another 7th and another 7th at Fairmont. At this point, I've stopped really having the ability to do videos every week due to a variety of factors. We're going to try to do a little bit better on that this season. I got tangled up in a wreck in the B main at I-90 on my first time out there, and things got a little bit rocky for a little bit, although I did score another top 5 at Fairmont. Then, of course, we had the USRA Summer Shootout. That was 5 nights of racing in a row, where we scored an 11th, an 8th, a 6th at Fairmont, Rock Rapids, and Hamilton County respectively. Words. We do have a video about the first part of that tour. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to gather up all the footage because some of the footage was lost from the next couple nights at Mason City and Sports Park Raceway in Fort Dodge. Then, of course, there was the big win at Fairmont. Followed up by missing the show at Deer Creek. That really brought me back to earth. So we followed that up with a 2nd place run at I-90. Actually had a really good run out there and led the majority of the race before coming up just short. And we did get a little bit of footage courtesy of my buddy Aaron over at Block 21 Motorsports. I'll share a little bit of that, but you can find on his channel, Block 21 Motorsports, you can find the full video from that night from his perspective. After that, it was another really strong run with a 6th place at Mason City, and followed that up with another top 10 with a 9th place at Mason City. And then we were kind of on the struggle bus for a while. Although the results don't look too bad, the car counts on these nights weren't really very good. We finally got things turned around, got a 8th place at Fairmont, Went down to Lucas Oil Speedway for the USRA Nationals, and unfortunately didn't make the show down there. We've closed out the points paying season because USRA points ends at the end of October with a top 10 at Hamilton County. And then we made the over 10-hour trek down to Tri-State Speedway in Oklahoma, where unfortunately we broke a distributor in the heat race, or actually in hot laps, first lap of hot laps, and didn't even really get to race. So that pretty much is the story of the season. There were some ups and downs. We had a lot of speed at times, but at other times we struggled. And now let's go back out to the shop and I'll show you some of the things that we're working on with the car to try to get better for next year. All right, we're back out here in the shop where, as you can see, the disassembly of the car has already started. Started taking the deck apart and a few other things. Started getting ready to pull the engine out. Now this engine right here you actually never got to see run on the channel yet. This is a brand new engine that I put together. It's not one of the ones that we disassembled on the channel. It's actually one that my buddy pulled off of a scrap pile. We built this engine to try to run at nationals, and it ended up flattening a lobe on the cam during the break-in process. Analysis on that basically is that it was bad parts. So we ended up throwing the used cam from the 2022 engine in it, and we ran it one night at the end of the season. Actually ran it 2 nights, finished top 10 with it at Hamilton County, and then we broke the distributor in it at Tri-State. So unfortunately, we never really got a true read on how good this engine is. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull it out of the car, and as soon as the carburetor gets back from being rebuilt by JDR, we're going to take that in and put it on the dyno, and we'll do a whole video about that process. So that's one thing that we want to do to try to improve our performance, is to actually get some dyno data from the engine, have a good sense of where the power band is, whether we're making a competitive amount of power, and how we can best utilize it with gearing. In the meantime, we've got the engine that we ran for the vast majority of the season. We put, I think, 32 nights on this motor this year. So I'm going to do a full teardown video on this engine as well. And we're going to tear it down, we're going to do a full rebuild on it, and we're going to get it ready to go. So we'll have 2 engines, a primary and a backup engine, and that's going to allow us to run a lot more nights and not have to worry about saving laps on the motor. Now going back over to the car here, another major change that I plan on making over the course of the off season has to do with the bodywork on this car. So the rear of the deck here, this is a critical area. Of course, the whole deck has to meet this rule, but specifically the rear is where it usually gets measured because of preload on the left rear suspension tends to pop that corner of the car up in the air. The height from the ground to this deck panel has to be a maximum of 39 inches. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to lower the entire deck of the car by a full inch in order to sort of help make the operating window within the rules a little bit better for us with that measurement back here. Obviously, the reason why that rule exists is because having the deck as far up in the air as possible is an aerodynamic advantage. But we want to go ahead and just lower it a little bit so we're not in such as tight a box as far as what we can run for preload on our left rear suspension. Another thing I want to point out here, looking back here at the fuel cell and battery area, is the location of the battery. It sits up high, sort of above the rear end area. I would like to relocate that, and that's another project that we're going to do for the off season that you'll see here on the channel. We're going to relocate that battery kind of, well, let me get this hood out of the way. We're going to relocate the battery kind of up here in between those 2 bars next to the transmission. And that's going to give us a little bit better weight distribution. And then the final thing, the final major upgrade that I want to make is we're actually going to install a left rear underslung bar. So what that means, in order to show you what I'm talking about there, I'm going to grab the light so you can see a little bit better. The underslung bar that we're at is going to be a removable bar. We're going to add some tabs. You can see those plates there where the J bar mounts. There's a little chunk of lead there. We're going to add tabs to the underside of that tube, and we're going to add some tabs to the underside of this tube up here next to the fuel cell. So we're going to have just like a U-shaped bar basically that runs under the rear axle on this side. Now the reason for doing that is basically just to give us a place to mount some more lead that's low and to the left. You can see we've got one chunk of lead that's up there next to the J-bar on that tube. We've got another clamp on one down there underneath the door bars essentially. We want to be able to get more lead low and to the left for our weight distribution to be what we want, help give us a little bit better drive off of the corner. Well, hopefully that gives you a good idea of not only how our 2023 racing season went, but the things that we plan to improve on with the car for 2024. It may not seem like a lot, but there's only so much that you can do within this B-Mod world and stay within the rules. So I think this is going to give us more flexibility with our suspension setup, will help the weight distribution of the car, and will allow us to hopefully maximize the aerodynamic potential of the car. Again, you'll see maybe not all of the work that we do because I'm just one guy, and setting up the camera and doing everything on camera makes it take a little bit of extra time. But I'm going to do my best to capture the main steps of all these processes and kind of share my thought process with you as we go along. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to tear down this engine over here that we ran for the bulk of the 2023 season and kind of show you guys what the wear and tear on the inside of that engine looks like. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. So stick around, check out that video, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hopefully this is entertaining and informative for you all, and we'll see you in the next one.